Hello, our truth warriors. Here is a lady seeking the truth, finding things shady, remaining a sleuth, exposing the unjust, brave to speak out, building the trust without a doubt. A big Atlantic Underground podcast welcome to Caroline Stevens.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. I didn't expect you to be a poet.
Yes.
And I wasn't disappointed, was I?
Thanks a lot, Caroline, for taking the time to spend with us today and speak with us. I'd like to start out by asking you if you could maybe tell us a little bit about your, tell our audience, sorry, about yourself and your career and how you ended up as an activist and a truth seeker.
Wow. We all have different paths and we're all pretty much now at the same destination, I think. Well, after leaving school at 18, I went off into the finance world, an insurance clerk who worked her way up to becoming a manager of an office. And I had to train staff. And then when I lost my job due to an act, which meant a lot of people lost really good jobs in the finance world. And I say really good jobs, we're not talking about stockbroker belt here, but a lot of us, middle managers, junior managers, and, a lot of people lost decent jobs. And so I retrained and actually then took myself off to university, but only for 2 years, just to get my basic qualified teacher status. So I've got a maths degree. I studied my honours in my first year of teaching. So I am a BA Hons and a BSc. So teaching children after having adults in the office, that was quite interesting. I'd not gone to a comprehensive school, but ended up by teaching in a comprehensive school, an ordinary state school. And it taught me a lot, I must admit. And then I had a family, and I basically, after 2 years of teaching, I had the family, 2 children. And then I ended up by going back to doing an adult teaching qualification whilst the children were at school. Qualified to teach adults now as well as children. And then I got involved in campaigning to get financial education into the school curriculum. And this was a way, as I look back now, because we're all on a journey, and people might have said at the time, well, that was so obvious that it was a way of the big boys getting their toe in the door in the schools, because it was all their literature. Once you've got a child opening a bank account, the chances of them moving account to account. So the finance world put a lot of money into this education charity, but it gave me a perspective then on what was actually happening in Parliament. And because I'd had a finance background, the finance and teaching children how to save and not go into debt, the finance world were very, very interested in my charity work. And not only that, but I actually there was a sequence of events, fate, God, whatever you want to call it. And I ended up by working on a voluntary basis alongside some actuaries. For those people at home who may never have heard what an actuary is, they're probably the most revered. It's the most revered occupation, or it used to be the most revered occupation. They're very statistically minded, and they work out what size of pension you're going to get from your pension pot. And also they work for the state as well, some of them, and they work out your state pension. So I was working, and I say working loosely, they paid my expenses to attend meetings, and I actually had an audience at the actuarial inn. It's called Staple Inn in London. So it was interesting. And I think it's because I've got a mathematical background, maths teacher, qualified, that it was much easier for me to understand the actuarial perspective. But I did speak to those actuaries off the record, must have been going back 8 years now when we were doing the campaign to get people more educationally educated on finance matters. And I did say to them, well, you know, we seem to be getting a lot more people coming into this country. How are you actually calculating the pensions? Because it must be quite difficult for you. And they said, shush, we're not supposed to talk about it because we will lose our jobs if we actually do the right thing. So to cut a long story short, then I ended up by writing a report for a government body, an all-party parliamentary report committee, gave the report in, no pay, just my perspective on doing the work, the charity work with children. And then I ended up by going on radio shows and went to a political meeting in March 2013. And for me, that was a light bulb moment. That was a moment where I realized that I'd been helping children to save and not go into debt, which is a true Northern mentality, isn't it, Chris? You'll agree with me on that.
Yeah.
Save, especially in Yorkshire. You know, they always say you don't get out for now. So, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. So I just thought, well, why is our government spending £55 million a day as part of a club? You know, we are an island. We had such a proud fishing industry. We had proud miners and the steel industry. And it was just as if a light bulb had switched on. And I thought, well, this is just outrageous, absolutely outrageous. Our children do not stand a chance because our government is basically borrowing money from the banks to pay this debt, to pay this annual or daily subscription. And a friend who wanted me to go to this public meeting, she said, Caroline, why don't you stand for the council elections? There in a couple of months' time. I said, oh, no. But she wanted to go to she wanted to go for a follow-up meeting. So she couldn't drive. So I took her and I said, well, I'll wait around. There's no point in me driving home and coming back for you because it's in the countryside. So I sat there with her and they were asking for volunteers to stand for this political party, which is UKIP. And they said, any more volunteers? We're trying to fill every seat in the county. And it's a big ask because we've never done this before. And the room was full, I would say, of people, Middle England, if you like. And it was almost like I saw an atmosphere. I don't know if you can see an atmosphere. It was like a haze. And you just saw people who really cared about the destruction of this country by successive governments. And I saw my hand go up. And I'm thinking, but I only came here, what is going on here? And my hand went up, I kid you not. And she said, oh, where do you live? So I said, where? And she said, oh, that place is gone. And so I ended up by being given an area which was 6 miles away. I had no connection with the place. But that said, I spent 6 days a week leafleting. They allocated me 2 senior gentlemen. They were in one was quite ill, actually. And so they both fired me up because they both taught me a lot of information about what the European Union was all about. They lent me books. And when they weren't lending me the books, they were out knocking on doors with me. And we covered that area. And it's no mean feat just to cover one council area and make sure that you deliver leaflets to every house, especially in a rural area. And I basically came very, very close to the Conservative. I was within 20 votes. In actual fact, the Independent who lived in the area swept the board, although I got 25% of the vote. That was for an area I didn't live in, had no connection with, And I thought, well, there's obviously, I didn't really want to just focus on paving stones and lampposts. So I took it the next step further. That was it. It got me on this different, slightly different path. And then I basically put myself forward as a candidate for Parliament. And 6 months' time, I got chosen, selected for an area, again, 30 miles away from where I lived. So which was quite good, because it gives you that, it's good because you get a bit of a reprieve, because if you live in the area, sometimes it's that people are literally on your doorstep. It gets that close.
Yeah,
right.
So especially when you stand for a very controversial party such as UKIP, and people maybe don't realise, but you see, the Tories, the Labour parties, the big establishment parties, all have a PO box on their literature. So they say, if you want to contact Caroline Stevens, contact her on PO box, and they all have an office. There will be an office in the county where people can be directed to. So they're not going to be ringing you on your mobile phone while you're out on the hoof delivering leaflets with all these volunteers who, as it happened, quite a lot of them were over 60, and the place I stood is based on 5 hills. So you have to be really super fit, or get yourself super fit, to cover 5 hills. The majority of the houses were on a hill. And if you got, houses on a hill, but not only that, but the front door is also up a series of a flight of stairs, quite tricky. So you're not going to get the volunteers that you would get perhaps on a flat area. And I came, well, basically I was sharing the platform, doing the hustings with Labour and Conservative and the Green Party. It was a very green area. And I just listened to the two main people, the Labour and the Conservative. Between them, they'd been in Parliament 4 or 5 times. So these were people who knew politics back to front. So it was a big learning curve again. Came third to those 2 guys. And I then became the Brexit campaign manager for the whole of the UK. So, because I've been doing so much working within UKIP. And so, sorry, I hope I'm not boring you, but
no.
Then I basically, for 11 months, I was working, pretty much having gone from being a housewife to working virtually 24/7 on call, to travel anywhere in the United Kingdom. I flew up to Scotland, I flew to Northern Ireland, and I drove to Wales. And I shared platforms with MPs. I set up stalls, political UKIP's leave stalls, I should say, not UKIP, that was a Freudian slip. UKIP's leave stalls in places like the SNP conference, the Labour conference. I wasn't allowed in the Conservative Party conference working for Leave. Now, isn't that interesting? I was allowed a stall at the Labour Party conference, the SNP, and could not get a stall at the Conservative Party conference. When I had to agree the contract with the political parties. So I rang the Tories up, and they said there's 2 places left for a stall, because we were up and running on the referendum planning quite late in the day, to be fair. So they said, who is it? And I said, it's Caroline Stevens from da 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 da. And they rang back later. They'd obviously consulted someone, said, sorry, we can't offer you a stall. So I said to my boss at the time, I said, well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? The Tories obviously do not want to leave the European Union. They were leading the country at that time as well. So I said, why don't I go up to Manchester? I'll take all my leaflets up, stay overnight, and spend 2 days basically handing out leaflets to people in the queue as they queued to get in. And these queues there could be 300 people in that queue in any one time. So that's what I did. So I mean, there's always been ways round difficult situations. And, you know, we now face the most difficult situation, I think, as awake and aware people have ever faced. And it's working our way around this.
Yeah. Now, you being a maths teacher, and as you say, things at this moment in time don't add up. And I don't want to come across as naive, but the governments lie to us.
They do. They do. But probably, you know, the fact that the Conservatives didn't allow me to have a stall, maybe not many people knew that. And so that should set the scene. That means that there are no surprises with this government or any government, because they never actually wanted to leave. They never wanted us to leave, because it was nice and convenient for us all to be squidged into this package, which was just another step into the New World Order. And just because we say we're leaving at the end of December, we don't know whose legislation, whose rules we're going to be following. They're not our own sovereign, you know, we have our own sovereignty, which we've given away to these political parties. And people get this, and then the next minute they'll send me an article about Trump, or they'll send me an article about Biden. And I said, but it's like two petals from the same flower. All of them are controlled by the elites, by the Bilderbergers, by whoever they are. So what can you say? It's changing habits which have been around for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to ask you about a secret meeting that you came aware of. Can we talk about the secret meeting that you recently revealed and how you became privy to this information and what actually happened at these meetings?
Okay, so these are some slides that were found on the internet. A friend of mine likes to, she does some research on me. If she sees something that she finds interesting, she'll send it to me. So she spends a lot of time watching YouTube videos. And hi, if she's watching today. But she's anonymous. And she basically found this video, looked at the comments below, and somebody said, oh, you must look at this link. So she clicked on the link, and she found a guy talking his way through some slides. Now, she can't quite remember whether, she thinks it was somebody after the event who had been presented with these slides and must have had a fit of conscience because of what he or she was hearing, that they felt morally obliged to let the wider world know about it. So she lost her viewing history. It all disappeared. She never was able to get back. But in the meantime, she had taken photos of each slide. So she'd worked through the night typing, because you have to type it, you can't copy and paste off this sort of thing. And so she sent it to me actually in an envelope in the middle of summer with some seeds, because I was out prepping in the garden. And I'd left it. I'll be honest, I hadn't even read the documents. I was so focused on prepping. And then I did a video a couple of weekends ago, and she rang me and she said, Caroline, it's about time you covered that common purpose course, the training session. And I said, can you send it to me again? So she said, because I hadn't realized the significance, obviously not having read it the first time. So when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness me. However, if I had covered this in May, June, or July, whenever I got that envelope, probably May, I think it was, June, you would never have believed me. What I relayed to people would have been so totally unbelievable. We see the likes of David Icke who say years in advance what they're planning to do to us. And that's when the ridicule sets in, and it makes people switch off you as a speaker as a truther. They say, oh yeah, well, we believe some of it, but we don't believe all of it. But then to present it in November, which basically a lot of what was foretold has actually now come true.
Mm.
And in actual fact, I did a follow-up meeting yesterday on Common Purpose, because there was so much meat in that meeting. You have this secretive organization that was set up by Julia Middleton in 1989, which actually has tentacles in many parts of the world. And I think you've got it over in America and Canada, and they're into Africa. And this Common Purpose, it's sort of linked in. Julia Middleton gets situated into number 10 Downing Street. So you've got Tony Blair, who took us into the Iraq War. 1 million people in 2001 had gone into the streets and said this was terrible. Nothing happened with 1 million people in London. At the same time, Tony Blair, it would look as if he's arranging for the parallel government to run right through Whitehall, the councils, all under the umbrella of Common Purpose. Now, I posted my video 3 yesterday, giving the background, a bit more background as to what Common Purpose is all about. The Queen has been heavily involved in Common Purpose up until the end of last year. She's also had, from 2014 to 2018, she's had her own leadership course for young people from all over the Commonwealth. So we cannot say that the monarchy is totally unaware of this, because I remember 2 years ago seeing on Facebook a letter with David Cameron on the bottom saying he's at number 10, and the letter-headed paper has a picture of the Queen on. So this is a charity which so it gets charitable status. The taxpayers are effectively giving it funding, and yet to have charitable status, they don't reveal the contents of any of their meetings. So hence these PowerPoint slides which we came across. It had the head of the NHS in Wales, the head of this 5G group that was covering Wales, head of Deloitte UK, head of a legal person, and so it goes on, and the police. So all these people are coming together, and this is exactly what Common Purpose is about. It's about this parallel government, and they claim, and the taxpayers pay this money through their accounts, through the tax, through income tax, and also through council tax, because councils pay in part or in whole for key players in the council to go on these courses, which can amount to £6,000 for 1 week. Leadership courses, and they talk about being beyond authority. So there should be alarm bells ringing, but yet hardly anybody has heard of Common Purpose. So that meeting, this lady who ran the meeting, she's the chief executive of Common Purpose, she was intimating that if people weren't vaccinated, that they would have to be sedated. Well, my goodness me. I mean, the front page of the papers, I think it was last week, I think it was the Times, Matthew Hancock was saying, well, we're not forcing mandatory vaccinations, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to see what the take-up rate is like. So they're going to go for the low-hanging fruit, first of all, because there are many people out there that think the vaccination is going to change their lives for the better, and they'll be able to be free again.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, that meeting, the term dishonestly honest was used, and this is how the media is working, being dishonestly honest.
I mean, dishonestly honest sounds like a way of an operating that the media has always done, which is to weave in the lies with the truth to a certain degree, so it becomes believable. Now, this common purpose that you stumbled upon there with everything, to me, as you say, it seems to be the big players have been given a directive. And this directive means that they all have to come together as a common cause to be able to unroll what we are seeing now, which means that what we're seeing now is very much pre-planned. Now, this again seems to be tying into me from what I'm already aware of what is the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, as well as the tentacles that you say that reach out, that really do seem to tie in with what was originally Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030. I mean, can we talk about what you know about Agenda 2030, which was formerly known as Agenda 21 for Sustainable Development?
Right. Well, they've got 17 goals in this agenda, and it's about sustainability, it's about employment, it's about every aspect of our lives. So nobody is supposed to be left behind. Now, I was reading a food report that was produced by UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and I read that out a bit of that earlier this week. They're saying, oh, a certain proportion, I think it's 9% of the world, is currently in famine status, and we don't want this. And they're leading up to us eating 90% of the time man-made food with all the bad chemicals in there. So they've not been satisfied with the food that we've been eating up to press. The Codex, there's something called the Codex Alimentarius, which means that the way the food is produced in the UK and abroad, that the food must not contain nutrients. And this is, anything natural is frowned upon. So it doesn't matter whether we're in the EU or we're not in the EU. All these Codex Alimentarius codes and the United Nations is superior in a way to the EU. It's like an onion, and it's just one of the layers. Or Russian dolls, you just peel a layer off and you've got another layer underneath. So what else have we got? We've got the 5G. I mean, people being in smart cities and being suffering with the 5G. And this is a difficult subject to talk about, because we've had people in the 5G movement who have been very vociferous and sort of, to a certain extent, it could be seen, because they go too far overboard, they get ridiculed. And, it's the people with the loudest mouths that have taken the forefront. Whereas I think a lot of people would have preferred people who were qualified physicists to, so this is how the government works. The government is supposed to, the elites are supposed to tell us what they are planning for us. But sometimes the people that they use to relay that message are seemingly not credible. So that's one of the targets, getting everybody in smart cities, everybody vaccinated. I've talked about cashless societies before. A lot of people haven't talked about the water partnership aid, and this is where I think it's going to be covered again in Parliament in Easter. So we've got this long, hard winter. So I'm looking at it from the UK perspective for a minute, and I'm sure it's mirrored in Canada. Our government has told us, on behalf of the elites, that we are due a long, hard winter. There will be floods, and there's various rumours from the electricity grid that there's going to be energy blackouts. So you have to prepare now for the worst, because if you look around you, we've got electric lights. I have got gas hob, electric oven, microwave, computers. You know, people will have electric blankets and so on. Imagine all of that being wiped out. And I think there's many people that cannot remember the 3-day weeks in the UK, where some of us were actually doing our homework with candles. And we also had the sugar shortages. So for people who've never experienced hardship, this is going to be a really, really hard winter. I can't see it being anything but, because the government has forewarned us about that. So this is all fitting in with the elites, because what's the NHS? Have we actually got an NHS anymore? Trying to reconnect. I've been trying to, strange, I'm using data on my phone, and there was a problem with the connection, free data, and there we go, but we're back. So sustainability, food is a big issue. Remember at school, you did your science lessons and you had that pyramid, didn't you? I'm not talking about the Illuminati pyramid. I'm talking about the pyramid of needs and wants. And your basic needs, think about what your basic needs are: water, food, shelter, and heating. So they could knock the heating out. There's going to be people now that can't afford their shelter. Food, that could be a problem with the fact that the government has basically not put plans in place for our food, for a full supply of food for the UK from the 1st of January. There are big issues there. A lot of our food comes through the Eurotunnel. So, and then water. Well, the water they'll leave till March, April time. I've seen a report about the water, and they're looking at linking our water into some sort of global water grid. Yeah. And then we see across the pond, we see that people have been forbidden from time to time from growing their own food, from collecting their own water. It's rearing its ugly head again in New Zealand. Why are you growing your own food? And it's just quite incredible that we have got to this stage, but it's probably taken 1,000 years to get to this stage, and everything because all these secret meetings have been behind closed doors.
Could we talk about the BBC's role in all of this as far as these meetings go?
The BBC, they said at the meeting that they would make sure that people were frightened, basically, for Project Fear. And then we've got an activist who has been campaigning, and he's come to the national attention. He's actually been put in the media and on television. And they said, why did you show this guy at this event speaking about 5G? And they said, the BBC said, well, it was a case of we took an executive decision. If we didn't do it, it would look ultra suspicious. So they do have some. What the BBC? I mean, I can go from here looking at my social media, Facebook, and see enlightened people, and then I might sit and watch the news in an evening. And I think I'm in two parallel. I'm just in two universes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
You know, I mean, it's for the old people, though. You know, the old people. For them, lockdown, the TV has been their only companion. And of course, as I say, they haven't been planning the pensions properly in the UK. And do they need? Ask the question. Do they need these useless eaters, as Prince Philip once said? On do you remember the interview where he said, if when I die, I'll come back as a virus to kill the useless eaters? Well, that's how they see us.
They're quite progressive in letting people know that they would rather euthanize the planet and limit the amount of people on there. Now, we were talking briefly then about the food shortages, and people are unaware right now of the food shortages we're going to see, not only because of so many shutdowns of production plants and farmers having to just pour away milk and throw crops away because the facilities are not there for them to go through the usual processes. This again is a massive financial impact. But you know, I saw your interview with Ice Age Farmer, and you discussed some great points with him, and you know, the things that I'm aware of in regards to food. You know, people aren't aware that they go into the supermarket now, and let's say they pick up a box of Kellogg's cornflakes. Well, the box is exactly the same size as they would always buy, but the contents within there has, over the past few years, got smaller. So you're paying the same price for less product in the same size box. So it looks like nothing's changed. It's an illusion. They're creating this illusion. It's very much a sign of a weakening currency, you know, and even right now what we're seeing with the supermarkets putting bags over things saying these are non-essential goods. They are directing people to certain things that they wish them to buy. We can already see these things coming into play. So yeah, that's the food side of things. But also, when we mentioned then about the changes coming in from the European Union and places like that in regards to their power and influence. Now, the World Economic Forum right now is stating, you know, we said there that they have to tell us what's going on. Whether people realize what's being said or not, it's almost like it's on a spiritual level that they have to tell people what they're up to so they are not judged in the end. And if they ever are accosted at that point, they can say, well, we did tell the people and they chose to ignore it. They're very clever in the way that they do this. Now, the World Economic Forum is stating through their mouthpiece, Klaus Schwab, that we are to expect now cyber attacks, which will make COVID pale into absolute insignificance. Because, and this is where this long, hard winter that you were just discussing about the power cuts, about the changes of things come into play for me, because I do think that if they do roll this out, we've got the guy who is the mouthpiece and the hub of everything that filters out into the system, letting people know that he thinks there's going to be a cyber attack. That cyber attack will effectively shut down everything, because the card machines where people pay for goods at the supermarket are not going to operate. It will affect power stations. It will affect a many number of things that will severely damage the infrastructure. So very much this cold winter, the 10 days of darkness, the internet not being on, many things like this would certainly tie into something like a cyber attack like that now. To me, it looks like it will be the greatest false flag that would ever come out. But right now, I'm also seeing what I think is also one of the greatest false flags in with the virus side of things. Now, this reset is required. You've been in the financial industry before. You understand how it's worked for many years with things such as fractional reserve lending and it being very unstable for such a long time. This reset is an opportunity that they have steered everything they have got right now to this point. This great reset that they want, I think, is financial for them to come out the other side with their hands clean of it, to be able to blame something like a cyber attack, to then come around and say, well, we have got the solution for you. It is the typical problem, reaction, solution scenario. They've created a massive problem. The people have gone along with it. There's going to be chaos. People aren't going to be able to buy food. People are not going to have electricity. when the mouthpiece comes back online, it's going to say, it's okay, we've got the solution, and people are going to accept anything just to get back to some kind of normality for themselves. Have you any insight into that?
Well, when I say I was in the finance world, I actually worked in insurance. So I didn't work in banking at all. I've only learned about the fractional reserve lending since I embarked on the Truth movement. So I was not some high flyer in the city of London dealing with the banking side at all. I worked in insurance, but I also see how insurance, because they want you to take out private medical insurance now and get rid of the NHS for people apart from COVID. I'm not quite sure how that works. I just think they're splaffing money against the wall to a large extent. It's the devil is always in the detail, and you're entering into a different contract with insurance companies. And once they know what your DNA contains, your blood situation, all this testing, your insurance company will undoubtedly be advised, and they'll say, oh, you've signed a declaration that information isn't being passed to anybody else. Well, that common purpose meeting in May highlighted that one of the top 4 accountancy companies in the UK stroke the world, Deloitte UK, they were seemingly being given all our information to link in to the 5G grid. So all these contracts that we've possibly signed with government bodies in the past, actually they're being dishonestly honest. So, but the banking side, I don't know all the ins and outs, but yes, the banks have been lending money out hand over fist for years when they have nothing to back that fiat money with. In, you know, Gordon Brown helped himself on behalf of the government he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer a few years ago. He helped himself to the gold and that out of people's pension pots. And then it's only when people retire do they realise that they've got a third less to play around with in pension terms, because the underpinnings are not there anymore. So all I see now is taxation, taxation, taxation. The climate change, if you don't fall over every hurdle, like, for example, if you own your own house and you have no mortgage, they're still going to get you, whichever way. There will be a tax. It'll be taxes for everybody. Anybody who's working, anybody who's not working, the pensions will be affected. Will there be a total collapse of the financial world? Gosh, they've been saying that for the last 2 years now. Be a brave person now to say when it's going to happen. It still hasn't collapsed. But as you say, tomorrow, if the energy grid goes down, and it goes down for a period of a few weeks, the supermarkets only have a couple of days worth of food. If you are reliant upon your debit card or your other types of cards, credit cards, you won't be able to use those. So for a period of time, maybe up to a week, you'll be able to use cash. And after that, when people realize there's nothing left on the shelves and there's nothing coming in, it'll just end up then by being on a barter system. And talking about the energy grid as well, with the new Green Deal, that is part of the situation, because over the next couple of years, the plan is, under the new Green Deal, is to stop people using wood-burning fires. So there'll be people at home saying, oh, it's not going to affect me. You know, if the energy grid goes down, I've got a generator, I've got this, I've got that, I've got a wood-burning stove. I'm all right. Yeah, that's what they're going to be thinking, because that's just human nature.
Yeah.
But, you know, if they get told that in the next couple of years, because of this climate change carbon tax, they won't be allowed to burn. And then I think, well, oh, our neighbours won't tell on us. Well, I look around and think, yes, they would. And, people say, oh, we went down to Trafalgar Square and we all our good vibrations, we got together and we're going to change the world. You get to the supermarket with that same cohort of people and there's one tin of beans on the shelf. Are you just going to, and you're starving, are you just, oh, Chris, you have that last tin of beans. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back to this meeting again, and something that I saw in a previous podcast that you were in. It talked about if somebody was watching material of a so-called conspiratorial nature, that they could get extra jail time and be re-educated. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, that is literally all I know. They did say the police were going to clamp down, I seem to recall, on people such as yourselves and myself, and we could be treated differently. And yes,
Right.
because the thing is, Deloitte UK, they did say, yes, gosh, you got me off the hoof now. They did say that they could take your computer down remotely if you were abusing, are you telling people about the truth about 5G, or telling the truth about, I guess, the contents of that common purpose meeting. All this about the police take your laptop off you to inspect it. Why would they need to do that? They can just do it remotely. And I had a lot of government alternative media people, shall we say. They're alternative media, but they actually work for the government. I won't name names, but people know my opinions about some of these groups.
Yeah.
And they were, as soon as that part 1 was released, they were straight on the blow. I said, Caroline, can you send us these, can you send us the link? And of course, what they're going to do, do they think I'm really stupid? They think that, for a start, if they find the URL, which I don't have, because I don't want anybody to start tampering with my laptop remotely, and if they do, we know why. So this is what I say: the Deloitte's they can do this. They can so they're obviously already into your computer. And when people say, "Oh, my viewing history has just all been removed," yeah, they can do all this. Google can do it. On Google, they're all into bed with each other. So remotely, they know what you're watching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
No, I know for a fact, there's been arrests around the world, right the way from Australia through the US and into the UK. There's been people that have wanted to plan protests and the police have turned up at the door. There's been people where the police have turned up at their door because of comments they have made on Facebook. So to not think that your systems and words are not being monitored, and also, people who are looking at what you're posting, there are people out there that don't like that, and they think that if they call the police and say, well, Mr. Jones at number 32 up the road has been talking about these conspiracy theories, and I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right that the police have the ability to go and knock on someone's door and question them about their freedom of speech upon the internet. I'm sure that their services would be far greater used targeting people that are using computers to look at things such as child pornography and going around and arresting them for the sickness that they have. But
the trouble is, sorry to interrupt, but the trouble is with the police is the fact that a lot of them are into that child porn, and they're also into the drugs industry, because I've been contacted by several people, and they've said the drugs have been pulled in from somebody's house, and guess what they've done with those drugs, Caroline? I said, what? They've probably burnt them, or what have you, disposed of them? No, they've given it to their own dealers and they're pushing it out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's very, very corrupt.
So can we talk about censorship, Caroline? Obviously there's tons of censorship right now with what's going on with COVID and people talking about it and exposing different things. So how has it affected you personally?
I spoke the truth and had my YouTube channel removed by a fifth columnist. So that was by telling the truth. And they said, right, okay. So they then spent subsequent weeks going through my YouTube channel and put in 5 copyright strikes against me on YouTube. And they were my copyright. I filmed, it was of me.
Yeah.
And just because I was on their show, and that person knew months ago that I was doing this.
Right.
So there was no problem then, but then they obviously got the nod or the wink from the powers that be, get rid of her. And so I was away at the time, visiting relatives, and I opened my laptop because I don't have Wi-Fi there. So I opened up my laptop in a department store using their Wi-Fi. And I was shocked. There was an email there from YouTube saying, we've had 5 copyright strikes against your channel, bum, 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 all in one go. So we're going to dismantle your YouTube channel. And if you, we've got no evidence of this, we've got no evidence that you've breached any copyright, but we're going to do it anyway. And if you want to get on your bended knee and speak to the people who've perpetrated this, then it's between you and them. So that's how easy it is for people to have their YouTube channel taken down. They only have to have somebody who's in the know, I say that loosely,
Right.
that they can do that. That is truly shocking. But what I do see is that you do get a lot of people who are in the movement who say, oh, I've been taken down, but then the following day, they're actually up and running on another platform. And I think, why were you bleating that you've been taken down, and then you've obviously had this in the planning, if you like. So it's not an excuse. I really was genuinely taken down. And so I just say to people now, when I do any lives on Facebook, because I've been banned as much off Facebook as
Right.
been on it this year, when I'm able to do lives, just download it, get it out there. Same with the common purpose ones. I mean, you've interviewed a couple of, well, you've interviewed a number one famous teller, and he's downloaded my first common purpose video and put it on his channel. He didn't ask me. I can't find any requests to do this, but hey ho, I just don't want people thinking that I'm not the person that I say I am, if that
Right.
makes sense.
How much work did you lose on your channel? Like how many years work would you say you lost?
Well, I didn't, because what actually happens, I'm not very IT savvy, and I don't know how to back things up. And basically there's a guy somewhere else in the country who backs everything up for me.
Okay.
And he's got it on like private servers away from his house, because I know the elites have tried to get to his house before.
Right.
So they know where he lives, but I can assure you, anybody who's watching this, that information is not on his premises.
Yeah. See, the
idea,
only thing with it though, and I understand what you're saying, but YouTube obviously is known as the biggest platform out there, right? So even with our channel, we're on BitChute, we're on Brand New Tube, we're on a bunch of different platforms, but there's a smaller audience. See,
Yes.
so you know what I mean. So they know, of course, they know all this, and I mean, when you get shut down on YouTube or Facebook, I mean, those are the two big players. They kind of got you. They're kind of eliminating, or they're narrowing your audience, right? So I mean, maybe we could talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is something that I thought about, because people said to me, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I look at the viewing figures. I mean, it was hard enough on YouTube as it was, because they were engineering my particular YouTube channel. So people would subscribe and then never got any notifications that I had got any uploads on there. And so they were being automatically unsubscribed from the channel. So that was one thing that I knew about.
Yeah.
What else was on there? The fact that, as you say, all these other organizations, YouTube is run by the elites. Most of these other channels are also run by the elites too, or people that would fall over and kowtow to them, I guess. And that's why I say it's really important for people to understand who's running the show here. And my videos ended up by going on to a channel called videoband.nl. Now that isn't on the same, it's a private individual who is not part of the elites. So that's where my videos are now, videoband.nl/Caroline-Stevens/, and that's my own selection of videos, because I am actually got the badge of honor that my videos have been banned. So it's fair for them to go on there for sure.
Yeah.
So there's no misunderstanding there. But what I do know is that when those videos, they'd had videos of all sorts of famous truthers on there, and they'd never had any problems with any cyber attacks. But when my videos were uploaded, they were receiving 10 cyber attacks a day. And so bad that they actually, and the person who runs it, what he doesn't know about IT isn't worth knowing, because he's worked for the financial institutions. So it basically, it did take the system down temporarily. And that was at the time that my videos were up there. So that's how dangerous this can be. And yeah, you talk about the dilution. People, you know, we're brought up to be the best, aren't we? You know, at school, who got top marks, who can run the farthest, and then it's in our mentality. Oh, they've only got 10 views. There must be something wrong with this video. There must be something wrong with that person.
Yeah.
And isn't it psychology?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, and you know, with a lot of shadow banning going on around currently, you know, and we've had, you know, we've interviewed quite a lot of well-known people, and we get a big response personally. We know how, you know, that people are looking at it, and you know, we've spoken to people and they've said, I can't believe that, you know, you've got this Atlantic Underground podcast set up, you're interviewing the right people, you're talking to some big names around the world, and you're not getting any massive amount of views the way that they would expect. And we've heard it from several people, and you know, we are probably aware that our channel itself is limited. The literally not allowing as much of the information to get out there as it should be, and that's kind of, you know, interesting to see. Now the videoband.nl that you're on, do you watch many of the videos on there for the people that are on there? The other,
well, they're the people that you're talking about, the big name truthers. They've been backed up on there just in case they get taken down by the mainstream channels. So I only went up there when they literally did ban me. So, and as I say, because they were on the mainstream channels, he wasn't getting the attacks.
yeah.
So this is obviously a concerted attack now, because they took me down on purpose. As I say, I didn't breach copyright, and they could work their way around it. And also I did interview somebody a couple of months before I got taken down, and that person made a lot of inappropriate comments on my channel. And then what the elites can do is then go back, why out of the blue, review that particular video and then take that down. So it could be that you could end up by interviewing people who could actually take you down from that angle, and that might be an angle you've never thought of.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've considered it, but you know, it appears that lately everyone's guilty until proven innocent anyway. So it's quite funny. Can we talk about, I mean, right now the middle class and small business owners are being absolutely persecuted. Whilst the big corporate stores remain open to make these huge profits, And, you know, they're also playing the role in the diminishing of civil liberties for people. You know, the Costco's we're seeing here are, you know, there's police outside waiting for people to go in. And if you're not wearing a mask and you're not doing this, you know, people are losing their civil liberties. They're also losing their ability to shop at the local mom and pop stores. What advice would you give to store owners and savvy shoppers right now?
Well, when the masks first came out, I learnt about the hidden disabilities, and you know, people could apply for lanyards over here.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you want a quiet life, but still be righteous if you like? So go and get a lanyard, and then not everybody, you know, it depends on how much shopping you do. I mean, I like to go out and about once a day or once every couple of days. So it's do we want do I want the confrontation? So, you know, the lanyard is the way forward. And no doctors, you're never going to see a doctor to get anything signed off. So you can't give any evidence if they asked you. And then it becomes, as you say, then becomes very intrusive. I've been, I'm just trying to think. I did turn up at a place a few weeks ago and I'd forgotten my lanyard. And this was at a supermarket, it's called Waitrose. And the lady comes rushing in to the shop because she stands outside. And she said, where's your mask? And I said, I popped in yesterday. Do you remember I wore that lanyard? And she said, oh, yes, you did. But if I hadn't have been in the day before, and it's so embarrassing, if the shop had been full of people, you feel as if you're a shoplifter. You haven't even left the shop, you know? It's why are they doing this?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's all by design.
Well, do you know the ironic thing about the Waitrose that I have in town? Because it's not a massive Waitrose, but during lockdown, that was when they got the security.
Yeah.
And there was nothing on the shelves. So I thought, well, why have you got security when you actually got nothing of food, any value to sell? And it's obviously given the supermarkets the nudge to have more security. And that's what I think, you know, if we're going to have a really severe lockdown after Christmas. The police apparently don't want to police New Year's Eve, so that's why we won't, you know, that's why we're on lockdown over New Year's Eve. That's the truth of it. And, you know, does COVID change its mind? If, you know, does flu stop at Christmas? It's, but the people, as for the jobs, gosh, I so fear for the younger generation who, you know, they went to university thinking that they were going for a better life, branch out, have a bit of independence. And that for many of those people at university, they've actually been on total lockdown in a room on their own, and not always been in control of how to get their food, and away from the parents, away from the family and friends. And I just think the students have had it really, really tough, to be honest.
Yeah, the mental health aspect of all this is probably going to be a lot worse than the virus itself, for sure. I'd like to ask you about something that I heard you speak of about the universal basic income, and it's something that's come that's been, you know, obviously it's been given out in the UK and it's been given out here as well. The starting of it last spring after this pandemic started. So what is your opinion on the universal basic income, and where is this going to lead, in your opinion?
Okay, so yeah, I've got friends who've gone on to the universal income, and because they were due holiday pay from their previous employer, it turned out that they didn't get any income for something like 10 weeks, and they were living off their savings. It equates to £400. What they're proposing to do, roll out for the whole country, and they're already trialing it, I believe, in Wales, an amount of something like £50 to £100 per adult per week. So
Wow.
say an adult would get £400. Say if they lived on their own, there's no economy of scale there. And think of the bills. So I'm just saying to the people at home, think of the bills you have to pay, even if you are in a privileged position and you have no mortgage. You still have your gas, you still have your electricity to pay for. The council tax for some people is £2,000 to £3,000 a year. So you can see how in a very short space of time, anybody who's watching and saying, oh, I'm all right, Jack, they are not going to be all right, Jack, at all. They're going to have their savings depleted until there are no savings to be had. And yet the private industry, private healthcare industry seems to be mushrooming, because I can't get a dental appointment in my town. It's only emergencies only. And because I'm under the NHS, but yet I see an advertisement on Facebook for a private dental surgery opening up in my town. So that's where we're going. The NHS is being taken apart to its bottom, and what have we got left? We won't have the savings to pay for any of that treatment. And if the government and the insurance companies know what our medical problems are, they're not going to cover pre-existing conditions. In fact, to be honest, it really negates potentially insurance. You've either got the money to pay for these operations or you haven't, because the insurance probably won't cover you in the fullness of time once all the data is filtered to the insurance companies, because they're all working in the matrix, aren't they? You've got the banking side, everything is registered. You are registered to the matrix, to your birth certificate, to your marriage certificate. They're tracking you anyway, everything you do.
Yeah, I mean, with the NHS currently, I mean, there's been a continual track record of businesses right the way through the UK, or industry right the way through the UK. Now, we've got doctors and nurses who are complicit in what I believe is a massive cover-up of what's going on currently. But do you see the NHS also falling foul to the same old time tradition and becoming privatized as an industry? And do you see a lot of doctors and nurses losing their jobs because of this?
Well, with artificial intelligence, they reckon that a lot of doctors will become superfluous to requirements. A lot of nurses now, apparently, I've got a friend who's got a daughter who's a nurse, and she's doing some sort of fast track to become a doctor. So, of course, that will be paying out on lower salaries. So how it's going to pan out, less of the traditional doctors can't get to see a doctor. And even if, you know, the doctors want pictures, they want to see you on Zoom meetings. And can you imagine the potential for being hacked, showing pictures of bits of your body and then them ending up on the dark web?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
That's
doctor's surgeries don't have the IT security that perhaps the top banks have.
No, it's a great point.
But do you think the NHS will be privatized?
Well, a lot of it is privatized already. And people have gone abroad in the past and it's been done privately through the NHS. There's a lot of people who, well, we've signed up to all these personal finance initiatives over the years. So there's been a gradual privatization by the back door anyway. And, you know, really, the government should have stopped all these PFI deals. I mean, who's paid for these Nightingale hospitals? We've had something like 40 Nightingale hospitals. And they just were built overnight. And that's because the government knew nothing about this pandemic at all.
Yeah, no, I know. And these Nightingale hospitals just seem to be full of empty beds. And some people even say that this was pre-envisioned with the big celebration prior to the Olympic Games, where the show that was put on showed all these beds you know, being rolled out, and even to appoint a huge effigy of what is believed to be Boris Johnson. And when you look back, if you actually look back at the opening ceremony, if people haven't seen it, of the 2012 London Olympics, compared to what's going on right now, I mean, some people say it's a coincidence. I'm a firm believer that coincidences don't exist. And yeah, again, this is maybe, as we discussed a little bit earlier, their way of saying, well, we did warn people.
Well, the thing is, you see, you get the dark side saying, oh, they dumb it down and say you're just a conspiracy theorist, you're a tin hat wearer. But you see, you get all these secret societies who do exactly the same thing. They have the secret codings with the fingers, you know, the Baphomet, the Illuminati. You've got the Freemasons, the way even they shake their hands with another guy that they have never met before. They hold their hands in a certain way, and yet they have the cheek to tell us that we're conspiracy theorists.
Right. Where you are in the UK, would you say, how are the hospitals there, like where you're currently living? Right now where we're at, there's a lot of cases in Nova Scotia, but there's nobody really in the hospital. So has this whole thing become basically a case-demic? And you know, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts as far as like where it's going to go? Are they still going to keep going on about the cases? And anyway, and how are things where you are as far as the lockdown situation?
Everybody's supposed to wear a mask in the store, and I'm probably the only person that doesn't. Schools are still running. Yeah. Still got school run to do in the morning and the afternoon. Yeah, that's still happening. It has disrupted a lot of children's education. It depends on how old that child is as to how they've been disrupted. And of course, it depends on the child themselves, whether they have a computer to work on, whether they are work orientated anyway. That obviously is going to mean that it's not going to be so difficult for them to start back in proper education. But for some children, it's been a big issue because a lot of them have done very little during the original lockdown from March through to June. So a lot of children did hardly do anything. So they are obviously, you know, there'll be obviously the children from certain backgrounds that perhaps haven't got a computer at home. And, you know, we do learn from our parents. And if our parents have lacked education in the past, how is that going to help the children for the future? So it's, you know, we can just see that they just want to eradicate the useless eaters. Well, that's how I can see it. As for the lockdown, hospitals, we've got a cottage hospital in our town. We're very lucky. Most of the cottage hospitals around in the countryside have all closed down and been used for housing. There's still, you know, the Conservatives put out an email yesterday, I think it was, and not that I would get it, somebody sent it to me, but they were saying how they're splashing the cash and levelling up the country. Well, because of infrastructure projects. So there's no tax. People aren't working. They're giving the money out on helicopter money. Yeah. And yet they are keen to get the HS2 rolled out. It's just basically they don't care anymore. It's just so in your face. They have no money. We've got austerity. They're going to dip into your pension pot and they're going to splash it out on HS2 and their takeaways, because Matthew Hancock's department had to defend spending £50,000 on takeaways.
Yeah. Now, do you think Liverpool was deliberately targeted with the military going in for mass testing? Strangely enough, after its solidarity and defiance in closing gyms down there, and they battled through. They refused to close the gyms, and they came through, and they were able to keep the gyms open. And strangely enough, within a week of them being allowed to keep the gyms open, much to the delight of people around the country supporting that these businesses should be kept open, the military roll into town, and they're going to be the main hub and test bed for going round to the schools and testing all the children. Do you think that was a deliberate targeting by the government for their defiance?
I never thought about it that way. Obviously, you coming from Liverpool, you've got your own sort of perspective on that. So I was just concerned. My main perspective was obviously having children, seeing how this was impacting on children. Having the military rolling up into a school would have freaked a lot of children out for a start. And I was really interested, having been a teacher, how they were getting round this authority that their schools seemingly had got thrust upon them to allow all the children to be vaccinated. But I did see some, and you see, the trouble is, you never know whether it's somebody spoofing and getting Project Fear going on social media. I did see a couple of letters which suggested that the teachers had to get authority from the parents. But then somebody else said, well, if a child has already been on a school trip, or the parents have signed a declaration from way back in the day, that declaration possibly could cover them for this situation such as this. And as you know, with that common purpose event, the fact is that I don't know whether any of these declarations actually make any difference at the end of the day. They're just going to do what they're going to do if they can get away with it. And I know people who said, well, to the children, if anybody comes in with a needle, basically, you give me a ring and I'm coming for you. So
yeah,
that's it. But one of the mums I know, well, a couple of mums actually, in different parts of the country, one in Essex and one in Derbyshire, their schools, their children are at primary and secondary schools, and the teachers have interpreted the legislation from the World Health Organization that they should have the windows open at all times in the school. And seriously, I mean, it was
no, I think that's going on here. Sorry, Caroline. I think that's going on here as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's happening with you with the schools then?
Well, the kids are still in school right now. Here in Nova Scotia, we've had a couple positive tests in the high schools. And so those particular schools shut down for a little while, for a couple of weeks, and they're going to reassess. But I mean, the way things are going now with all these positive tests coming through, I think eventually, it's going to shut down. I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like they probably will at some point shut down over the winter. That's my prediction. But
with artificial intelligence, as I see it, they don't need children to continue going to university. The whole mantra for the university was to bring in the Goodenough-Kalergi plan, to be honest. It was Goodenough-Kalergi by the back door, universe, one world. So that's, when we have a lot of the academics give their opinions to the government. And for example, they were talking about the migrant crisis down in Kent. And they go then to a lady who's Spanish, who happens to be at a UK university. So she will have a different perspective, but she still speaks with a Spanish accent. She will have a different perspective to somebody from the steel area, or the mining area, or the fishing industry in the UK. So they've been able to homogenize the population and the outlook into New World Order for so long, and people haven't seen it coming.
Yeah,
right.
I've already been approached by a couple of people that are quite high up in the process of decision making within the area that we are here in Nova Scotia. Yeah. And they've come out to me and they've said, that they are already getting these platforms together, the digital platforms, even before all the COVID stuff came in, and they have been developing the home learning. Now, when the first lockdown came, they started the test bed of having the teachers call up and do almost like a Zoom meeting with some of the children, a group chat where they were doing some kind of teaching on there. Now, we came out of lockdown, and again, it looks like we're heading into the same thing again now. But the technology, they sent the kids back to school. Johnny said his kids are back now, but they sent the kids back to school because the information, the computer systems, and everything that they wanted to use for this home-based learning system was not up to speed, and it wasn't ready. It will be ready. It will be ready soon, and it looks, that this is going to be the way forward. They want people to work from home. They want the children to learn from home, and they want everything to become digital. And you've got to be concerned why they want this moving forward. We can only surmise why it is, but looking at further control over people and smart grids and information and recording and telling things how they are, it's almost like they have to have their finger on the pulse and control absolutely everything.
Well, that reminds me of that food report from the United Nations, UNICEF, etc., World Health Organization. They want to be able to control every morsel of food that you eat, and it's quite you see in, is it South Korea, if you waste food and you take it to the dump to get rid of it, they actually weigh the food and will charge you a taxation if you waste your food. Because I guess probably a lot of them, you can't just go and bury it in the garden. I guess a lot of them are living in high-rise blocks. So, and I think when I interviewed the Ice Age farmer, you probably remember, they go into a restaurant, say there's 5 people going in, but they can only order 4 meals. So they want to take control of the food, the water, the air that we breathe too, and as you say, education. Then what's the point? The universities, perhaps, to a certain extent, have done their job of bringing in people from other countries, and it's been an informal immigration system. It's not just been about the European Union and free movement of people from 28 different countries.
Yeah.
It's also because 4 out of 5 people who come into this country go to university, say from Hong Kong, for example. 4 out of 5 people never return. So that's another form of immigration. So, people looking at Brexit, there's so much more going on. I mean, they've filled the government, whilst on the first lockdown, they've been filling 3- and 4-star hotels around the country, 50 hotels, I believe, with migrants, people from Africa and people from even further away than that. And I've actually seen it with my own eyes. And, that was one time when I was on a public footpath and I was outside a 4-star hotel with beautiful window boxes, and a guy from, who knows, but somewhere in Africa came out. I said, "Oh, where are you from?" Because, the government's always very keen to say, "Oh, we're bringing in these people for because of coming from war-torn countries." There's very few war-torn countries. And, that had almost almost 1 million views on Facebook, that video.
Yeah.
That was one thing, because it was truly, truly shocking, and it really brought it home to people. But the governments are all complicit. The people are being passed from France to the UK, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. It really is. And then
Yeah.
people,
I've seen
you
that.
know, the craziest thing is the people almost want their own demise because they plan their own demise. Because when they were talking about immigration and Brexit, and people were saying, oh, well, we'd like the intelligent people to come. And I'm thinking, so you want the intelligent people to come? Yeah, you know, the people who could take your job then. Because they changed the contracts. I know a lot of people on the shop floor in the car industry, just for Brexit, they brought in a lot of new people and they want totally different contracts. So they were
Yeah.
bringing people in from the EU to effectively oust the other people out. So, you know, people have for years justified immigration and saying we want the best. Well, selection, it's all about natural selection then, isn't it? We're not going to be prepared to look after everybody. We're just going to boot out the ones at the bottom and just have all the elitist type people in this country. Well, that's nice, isn't it, for somebody who's not academic?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Now, have you been approached by any whistleblowers who are not prepared to carry on the current charade with any key information?
No, well, I'm thinking of the medical side, but I mean, I've had whistleblowers, people who've had their children removed from them by social services. And I know that there was one lady who actually had it mentioned in her court papers that she was not to go on Caroline Stevens's show. Seriously?
Wow.
Yeah, but the child removal from the family unit, somebody said to me yesterday that, you know, we've got so many more people going to the food banks now, and they reckon there's sort of not substantiated evidence, but hearsay that it could be a way of them targeting other families because the families are becoming deprived, and then that gives them the opportunity to say, well, on the grounds of probability, that child will be not benefit living in that family in the future, so they'll remove that child. That
Wow.
happens.
Yeah.
That you don't actually have to have a proper reason to have your child removed.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is scary. So I'm going to ask you a question that we've asked most of our other guests on this show. How do you think this is going to go down going into the winter with the COVID-19 and the pandemic situation? Like, what are your thoughts of what will happen? Will it be everybody's going to be all overjoyed for a great vaccination? Are they all going to be running in the streets volunteering, or how do you think it's going to go down?
Unfortunately, there will be a lot of people that will be queuing up for that vaccination every day, every other hour on the TV. We've just had a guy on, some sort of medical person from North London on the news this morning saying, oh, well, by Easter, everything will be okay because of the vaccination and because of mass testing.
Right.
Well, you know, just don't give your consent. And then they see, the thing is, can the dark side, if you don't give your consent, and what does the consent consist of? Because did you vote last year? No, didn't vote. But you're registered to the matrix, and there's insufficient time to remove your birth certificate. And you know, let's be honest, if a policeman knocks on the door, goes down the street, is going to knock on or the army's going to knock on every single house. There's not going to be like a symbol on one person's door which says that this person has taken themselves out of the matrix.
Yeah.
I don't see how that can work. Do you?
No.
Can't see how it'll work in that regards, but I can see that, you know, if they're going to start offering universal basic income to people and literally hold the financial strings over people, that if I can see them saying, okay, you know, if you don't get this vaccine, or if you don't do this, we will, you know, literally withdraw the funding that you're receiving. People will starve to death. You know, people will say, well, what choice do I have? I've lost my job or I've lost my business because of what they've rolled out. They've put me onto a universal basic income so I can buy whatever's left on the shelves at the supermarket. And now, because I'm refusing to get a vaccine or go along with their plan, they are now telling me that they're not paying me. They're gonna narrow it down, I think, so people do not have options. And those people who have not been prepared for this and got themselves ready, full well known what's coming, unfortunately, are the ones who are going to suffer the worst in that regards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of people out there say, well, I've got a real fire, I've got a wood burner. That's just an example. They think they're prepared. And what happens if they come knocking on the door and say, well, sorry, you can't do that? And they thought they were safe in that regard. What happens if, with the electric grid, people have said to me, how many bottles of water should I organise? And I'm thinking, well, have you got a water book? But a lot of people live in flats. All these new build now in the UK, I don't know who's supposed to be living in them, possibly the people from Hong Kong, because this was been on the cards for years, ever since we gave Hong Kong to the Chinese. That has always been waiting in the wings to become an issue. We're 3 million Hong Kong. We're offering 3 million Hong Kong people a passport to come and live in the UK. So they might be thinking, oh gosh, well, it's going to be better than being under the jackboot of China. Well, they ought to have a look here first, because it's going to turn into the jackboot of the UK.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I think we're going to wrap things up here, Caroline. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. But before we go, I just want to ask you, do you have anything coming forward as far as your show and your videos? And where can people get a hold of you if they want to, get your information and follow you online? Where can they get a hold of you?
Okay, thank you. I've got a website, carolinestevens.net.
Okay.
Stevens with a PH. It's all lowercase. Yes. carolinestevens.net. Really easy to remember. As you say, videoband.nl, which is based in the Netherlands. And then there's a section for Caroline Stevens in there. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Kaz-Ann Stevens, ANN, at Kaz-Ann Stevens. Yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn as well for those people in the business community. I've got a lot of people on LinkedIn who work in the City of London, and I was connected with them before I went into the Truth Movement. So I share my videos in there as best I can. And that's where I can be found anyway. Caroline Stevens with a PH. And thank you so much to both of you for giving me this opportunity to reach your Canadian audience.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, likewise for you to reach your audience as well. And Chris, do you have anything further for Caroline before we go?
No. I mean, I think we pretty much covered the fact that we're aware of what's going on around the world. It seems to be very similar in the UK as it is Canada. It seems to be a global rollout of control and governance. And people just need to be aware of this. People, should really question what's going on. There's a lot of fear in the world right now. People seem to be going along with the plans, and it's causing a great divide. But I believe as a group of people that want to move forward and help people out there, right now we're being very much chastised by the majority as being the ones who are pretty much rocking the apple cart. I like to assure people that that's not the case. We do put a lot of time into research. We do understand a lot more than the average person would know that sits in front of the TV. And we're here now just as hopefully a beacon of light to help people understand what's coming towards them and what danger they're actually in. If they heed that information, that's completely up to themselves. But, I think that between the three of us, that's where we're heading. I don't think we're going to change course. We've set sail in that direction now. And as we believe in what we're doing, it's a good thing.
Well, they do say, don't they, that the vaccination will affect your DNA. And for me, I'm a woman of faith. And if it takes us away from our creator, then that is their end target as well.
Yes.
So, because they do believe in the creator. And, I've read out about the secret covenant. They hide behind all these facades and pay people accordingly to do their dirty work for them. So if you're watching today and you have that prick of conscience, like the person who attended that common purpose meeting, please do step forward, because the more of us who seem normal people, the better chance we've got of getting that message out there. No, we don't want ranty people, because they do us no good service at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it, Caroline. And I want to thank you so much again. I know you're very busy, and I appreciate your time. So
I appreciate you seeing me at 6 o'clock in the Canadian time in the morning.
Yeah, it's early for us, for sure. So like we say to our audience, love one another, believe nothing, and question everything. And that's a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.